Sweden wasn't always the size it is right now. It used to be a Scandinavian power with its own imperial ambitions. It had one of the most powerful monarchies in Europe at the time, with even goals to expand beyond the continent. This didn't last forever, however. In 1809, Sweden fought a war with Russia, which ended in devastating defeat for it. Sweden never fully recovered from this conflict, and after it sought a policy of non-alignment on the geopolitical stage. It continues to hold this policy to this very day. It has kept the country out of both world wars and has allowed it to remain mostly non-aligned during the Cold War. For Finland, the story is a little different. During the 1809 war, it was acquired by the Russian Empire as a result of the Swedish defeat, and it remained so until the end of World War I. After the end of Imperial Russia, Finland had a rather rocky relationship with the Soviet Union. It was constantly plagued by border disputes and protests, as well as a war in 1939 known as the Winter War. Much of it ended with the signing of the Treaty of Good Neighborly Relations. After the end of World War II, the Soviet Union still sought to influence Finland. It pressured them into signing the 1947 Paris peace treaties so that it would not join NATO, the European Economic Zone, or the European Free Trade Association, as well as having them reject the Marshall Plan. This goal was to make Finland, which wasn't a communist nation, a sort of neutral state between the East and West, something that would be emboldened as Sweden would share in that role. To bridge the difference, Finland had Finefta, or the Finnish and European Free Trade Association, with the West, while it also worked with Comecon to the East. This all ended in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. With that, all treaties with it were no longer seen as legally binding. Sweden and Finland both joined the European Union in 1995, but they stopped short of joining NATO. For years on end, Moscow has been against the idea of either of these two Scandinavian countries joining the alliance, especially for Finland, considering that the two countries share a 1,300-kilometer long border. The relations between Helsinki and Moscow have generally been calm, at least up until recent times. Being EU members, both Sweden and Finland are bound by the EU's Mutual Defence Pact, as written in the Mutual Defence Clause. This resolution isn't as rock solid as NATO's Article 5 on collective defense, but it is something for the two nations. Not only that, but many have described Sweden and Finland as de facto NATO members, considering that they are members of the Partnership for Peace and have taken part in many NATO exercises over the last few years. Sweden and Finland have even sent troops to Afghanistan as part of the ISAF mission. Regardless, these two are not bound by NATO's Article 5, and there have been no plans to bring forth either of the two nations' ascension into the alliance. That is until 2022. Russia's renewed invasion of Ukraine has sparked many concerns about security in Europe. 2 weeks ago, the prime ministers of both Sweden and Finland met in Stockholm, where they would discuss requirements for the two countries. They would bring forth an internal study, which would last until the end of May, and if it would be decided that it was necessary, they would apply to join in June.
The European security architecture have changed fundamentally after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The change in the security landscape makes it necessary to analyze how we best secure peace for Finland and in our region in the future. The report sees NATO as it is, not only as a military alliance, but also as a political alliance. NATO is an organization where important decisions concerning our security are taken. It is an important part of Europe's political and security architecture. As part of the discussion, we need to assess how our possible NATO membership would respond to our security needs. We also need to be very frank about consequences and risks. There are both short-term and long-term risks. Both Finland and Sweden make independently their decisions regarding security policy arrangements. But we do that with a clear understanding that our choices will affect not only ourselves, but our neighbors as well. Our aim is clear. We want to guarantee peace in the future for us and for our region, for Europe, and to contribute towards that aim with our own choices.
We have to really think through what is best for Sweden and our security and our peace in this new situation. And of course, what is happening and the discussion in Finland is important for us to follow. Therefore, we need to have a very close contact. But we have to have a process in Sweden to think this through.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has even prompted several parties in both Sweden and Finland to move closer to the idea of NATO membership, which means that a parliamentary majority would be secured. Also adding to that is a shift amongst the public. After 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, polling in Sweden and Finland was only at 21 to 28% in favor of joining the alliance. Numbers were similar in January 2022. However, after the invasion on February 24th, support for Finland's ascension into NATO spiked to 53%, while Sweden's polls stood at 61%. That number only increased as Finland's poll numbers then jumped to 61% in March, and a more recent poll in mid-April showed that 68% were in favor of joining NATO, while only 17% were against, the highest numbers in history. From this perspective, you can see how things look set. President Sauli Niinisto saying that the future of Finland and the alliance, stating that it was up to Finland to decide, and with even the Finnish foreign minister officially stating that it was Finland that was most likely that was going to apply to join the alliance. Putting probability aside, how would the ascension of these two nations impact the alliance? Quite a lot, actually. As one European alliance diplomat described it, Finland and Sweden would be net contributors to the alliance, greatly bolstering its capabilities. Finland has one of the largest militaries in Europe, mostly due to its conscription policy. This would also increase the size of NATO's military. Sweden also has its own military complex, as many quality weapons such as the Carl Gustaf and the AT-4 launcher are manufactured there. A vital area that would be of help to the alliance is the skies, as the ascension of the two Nordic states would increase the alliance's air power by 15%. Sweden operates high-powered jets such as the Saab Gripen, one of the best fighter jets in the world, while Finland operates a large fleet of upgraded F-18s and has even recently bought the F-35. The ascension of the two Nordic states would increase NATO's artillery strength by 8%, bolstering the land force's main firepower. Another vital area that would benefit NATO is in the field of intelligence forces. Both of these countries are quite close to Russia, and that would greatly increase the reach of NATO intelligence. All of this explains how it would look in regards to military strength. But it's also worth noting that changes would also be visible on the geopolitical stage. The Baltic Sea is a vital and strategic location for both sides. If Finland and Sweden were to join, Russia would lose control of the Baltic Sea, and the mainland and Kaliningrad would be cut off from one another. This would also have profound consequences for Russia, as much of its trade and energy also go through the sea. Equally as important, the Swedish island of Gotland is vital in projecting military influence in the region, as it ensures the sea and air defenses of major Swedish urban centers. Upon any ascension, this would be in NATO hands, and it would allow NATO aircraft a new airstrip to launch aerial strikes in the event Russia invades the Baltic states. Speaking of which, the ascension of these two Nordic countries would strengthen NATO's logistical capabilities towards the Baltic states, given the proximity. Not only that, but it will also alleviate some of the pressure from the Suwalki Gap, which is a narrow piece of land that is between Kaliningrad and Russian-aligned Belarus, which connects Lithuania to Poland. For years, it has represented a military difficulty, as Russian and Belarusian forces could strive to conquer the gap and cut the Baltic states off from the rest of NATO. With the inclusion of Finland and Sweden, this would make the defense of the Baltic states that much easier. With a NATO-dominated Baltic Sea, resupplying and arming the three nations would prove easy. Also, the narrow distance between Finland and Estonia would allow easy access, an alternative from the Suwalki Gap. With even a proposed Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel, this would be even easier. Naturally, Russia is aware of this and knows the dangers imposed, since their invasion backfired on the psychological impact of the invasion. Moscow has already warned against this measure, as a Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said that Russia would have to rebalance the situation with its own measures if Sweden and Finland join NATO. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova also said that Russia would undertake serious military and political consequences that would require retaliatory steps if the two Nordic countries join NATO. There was also talk of Russia's deadliest battlefield weapons. Back in late February, Russia placed its tactical nuclear warheads on high alert. It has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. Considering that NATO's military and economic prowess trump that of Russia, it is plausible to see Russia activating the one segment it's superior in, its tactical nuclear stockpile, if it were to find itself losing the fight. After Sweden and Finland announced plans to consider joining NATO, there was talk of deploying tactical nukes to its western borders. In a new age of Russian aggression, the prospect of NATO membership has gained much traction. Even other EU nations that are not in the East are now weighing NATO membership, such as Ireland. We'll just have to wait until summer to see what the verdict will be and how Russia will truly respond. After all, Russia made its own threats in 2004 when the Baltic states joined NATO but did nothing. It could give us a hint about what is waiting for us now.